Donc, rebonjour tout le monde. J'aimerais partager avec vous, comme j'ai dit tantôt, j'aime les pratiques practical. There's a great expression in French, like tips and tricks. And so I'd like to give you some additional ideas. Today is a lot about expanding your mind and giving you things to think about that you can take back and apply in the organization. Although it doesn't sound like you need much help. If you've got Sundays and coloring, those are great tools that could definitely be added to the toolkit. So I'll go to slide 2. Janet, you're going to be my clicker?
Yeah.
So you know that for these kinds of presentations, I always tell people a little bit about myself just so that they know from what am I drawing inspiration for what I talk about here. So one is being a leader for 25 plus years. Louise talked about my blogging, so I've been doing that for 8.5 years, available on GC Connects, Cafe Gen. And then I'm the champion for an initiative that's really more of a movement now called CORE, Changing Our Organization Through Respect, Changer notre organisation par le respect. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. So CORE, as I said earlier, it started as an initiative in one part of Natural Resources Canada where we had a really high harassment numbers in the Public Service Employee Survey in 2011. 31% of the employees in that particular, in the policy shop within NRCan had said they had been harassed in the previous 2 years. I don't know what the number was like here, but that number astounded me. And so I thought there really must be something we can do about it. So we created this initiative CORE. It evolved over time. Like Franca was talking about how grassroots the development of the charter here has been, it was very much a grassroots initiative. So I developed a committee with a group of employees, and it was very life-changing for me as a manager, just to be able to hear directly from employees what they thought, how they felt about the workplace, things that they liked, things that they didn't like. And so, and now that I've left NRCan and I don't have that team anymore, it really is about a movement for inspiring public servants to create a happy, healthy, and respectful workplace. I'm not going to do every slide in this deck. It's a longer deck that I tend to deliver, so I'll just move on to give you the outline of the deck, which is, I'll start more from what we can do as individuals to create wellness in ourselves, what we can do as employees in our teams, what we can do as managers, and then some things we might do as an organization. J'aime commencer quand on pense à nous-mêmes avec le livre Thrive de Arianna Huffington, qui est responsable ou le chef de Huffington Post. And I read her book, and it's an okay book, but there was one part in it that really struck me. And she talked about how we take better care of our smartphones than we do of ourselves. She says we have little charging shrines all over our houses with cords permanently attached to outlets beside our bed. The first thing we do when we get home is we make sure our phone gets charged. We are exquisitely aware of the recharging routine of our phones. We know how often they need to be charged. They know to know how long they need to be charged, how long we can go without being charging them. And yet with ourselves and our bodies and our minds and our souls, we will run ourselves into the ground. And many of us are sleep deprived. I certainly suffer from that myself. And the more sleep deprived we are, it robs us of our emotional intelligence, our self-regard, our assertiveness, our sense of independence, our empathy towards others, the quality of our interpersonal relationships, how positively we think, and even our ability to control our impulses. So what's interesting to me about this book is just that, you know, when you read something and you think, yeah, that really speaks to me, and that's really spoke to me. So getting sleep, taking care of yourself, very important. The concept of brownout was something that I came across and ended up writing a blog post about it because it's very different from burnout. Burnout, you can recognize burnout in somebody else, but we often don't recognize brownout. It's that kind of gradual loss of energy, focus, and passion. And it happens when we sacrifice our personal lives, sometimes to achieve professional goals. Sometimes it's just to get through the day and get work done. It's not only sometimes imperceptible to others, but it's sometimes imperceptible to ourselves. We don't feel ourselves slipping into burnout. So one of the ways to avoid it is committing to activities that will make you feel better, increase your energy. I don't know if, Serena, you're naturally a walker, I'm guessing, because you volunteered. A runner, probably makes you feel good. Things that stimulate your mind or enrich your spirit, exercise, eating well, getting enough sleep, as I said, learning something new and learning something outside of what you do every day, and getting involved in a community outside work. And another tip that I read somewhere that I absolutely loved, talk to the elderly. I think that's a great thing we probably don't do enough of. I'll skip this one on workplace stress. One of the activities we had done through CORE was to bring in a psychologist who taught us all about stress. So many organizations have done that, but that's definitely something that I recommend. We don't take a lot of breaks here. Not only do we not take breaks, it's like they don't even it's like a concept that wasn't invented. Mais on ne prend pas même nos pauses de dîner. On travaille, on mange en faisant le travail. Mais quelques idées pour prendre une pause, que ce soit c'est à l'heure du dîner ou le matin, les après-midi. Have a break buddy. Somebody who is your buddy, who is going to take you and you just have a little partnership and you say, okay, yeah, let's go for a break. Walking and talking, and I'll talk about walking meetings in a second. Staying hydrated. I've always loved this idea. I've never implemented it, but the idea of a healthy snack club. Does anybody have a healthy snack club? You have a healthy snack club? Unhealthy snack club. That's good too in a pinch. Podcasts, great way to take a break. There's how many people have heard of Toddcast? 3, 4? It's there's a guy by the name of Todd Lyons who does podcasts, incredibly professionally produced. They're about public servants, done by a public servant. So toddlyons.ca, you can look that up. He has terrific podcasts. And then take a break just to get a different perspective. Go talk to somebody else in your work team or in a different work team. I talked about walking meetings a moment ago. So unlike driving, you can do all sorts of multitasking when you walk because you don't have to think about walking. It's a great way to boost creative output and energy. It's a different environment. Sometimes it inspires different ideas. It's fantastic if you're an introvert because you don't have to sit across from somebody and stare them in the face. You can just go for a walk side by side. The guy in this picture here, George Broomer, introduced me to walking meetings. I have yet to do one here. Darren told me that from November to February, you won't be doing walking meetings on Tunney's pasture. It's just too cold. And I probably don't really have the time. But if you have the time, I highly recommend them as a way of, getting out and doing something different. I share this story a lot, and it's to never underestimate the power of one kind word. And I had sent an email, so an ADM had sent out an email about, I think with a speech attached, and had copied a bunch of people, and it was my guess that one of the people on the CC list had been the person who had written the speech, but I didn't know for sure. But it was a really well done speech, and in fact there was one part of it that was all about showing respect in the workplace that he had written that was just beautifully done. So I sent back my comments to the ADM and I said, this was a really well written speech. So I think the next morning I got an email back from somebody on the CC line who said, when you wrote something kind last night, your words gave me a real lift when I needed it. Suffice it to say that I am blessed in many ways, but often self-confidence is not one of them. I struggled with depression as a young man. A residue of anxiety remains. We all have our challenges and stories. I just want you to know that you helped me and that I appreciate it. Come to think of it, you've done it more than once. Reminds me to do the same for others. And I was really touched by that because I didn't know this employee very well, and I felt very honored that he was sharing that level of being that open with me about his personal circumstances. And it reminded me again of the power of one kind word. And sometimes, you talked about the little things we do. Craig Dowden, who wrote the Apex papers, Civility Matters and Maximizing Employee Engagement, talks about the seemingly inconsequential. It's the tiny things we do, and it cuts both ways. There can be the seemingly inconsequential things that we do that, like not saying hello to somebody in the morning, that can bother them, but also those tiny little things we can do, the seemingly inconsequential compliment, can really give people a lift. So that's on my list of things to do to create workplace wellness. Craig Dowden also said he came in and facilitated a session I was at, and he asked us what the number one reason people give for not being civil. And do you know what that reason is? I'm in a rush? Yep. Lack of time. I don't have time to maybe hold the door right. I don't have time to say good morning. I'm rushing to a meeting. And it reminded me, and I think it was actually in CPAB Gab that I was typing up my Jen's journal one night in a rush. And the words that came out of my fingertips were, there's always time to be kind. And sometimes, as I was saying with Louise earlier about trying to be in control of my emotions, I can be running really fast inside, but I try to calm down. Like I try to slow myself down so that I can be kind. And that actually led to what's reflected on this next slide. It led to the creation of the Respect in the Workplace quiz. So we were sitting around in the core team meeting, and a woman by the name of Sam said, you know what I hate? I hate when I get an email that doesn't start with my name. And I said, well, okay, like we're in the 21st century here. Like people text all the time, and our emails don't need to be like letters. They should be more like texts. You can tell before you open the email, you can tell who the email is from. So I said, okay. So I asked everybody in the room, I said, who sees it like Sam and who sees it like me? And everyone agreed with Sam. And they all hated getting an email that just started with, where's that report? And so ever since that day, I've always made a point, because generally someone's asking me a question. And so my first instinct is to start answering the question. And then I back up and I put the person's name at the top, or I put the person's name somewhere in the email, unless we're back and forth 100 times, and then it gets a little bit shorter. But that first email that I'm initiating, I always put the person's name in it. And so people in this conversation started talking about all the things that drive them crazy. And one woman said, I hate the fact that every morning when I come to work and park my car, the person who has the spot beside me parks on the line. Do you know this one, Sandra? And so we started throwing out all these things that people do, and then somebody said, I hate when somebody doesn't open the door for me, and I hate when someone doesn't say good morning. So I took all of those ideas and turned them all into the positive and created a Cosmo-style quiz about the things you can do, that seemingly inconsequential things you can do to show respect for your colleagues. So in the work environment, you hold the door. In face-to-face communication, you say good morning. You invite everyone when you're organizing a social event. In electronic communications, my personal pet peeve is people who decline meeting requests, just decline. It'd be like if you said, I'm having a party, do you want to come to my party? No. And that was it. So if you decline a meeting with me, lie if you have to, just say why you can't be there. In meetings, if you let the organizer know in advance you're going to be late or that you're going to leave early, or refrain from smartphone use, which is my first thing. Listen to understand, not to make your own point, and vacate a boardroom when your time is up. So now moving into kind of what you can, more of the things you can kind of do. You can join CORE, but you can join all sorts of movements that are in the public service. How many people here are on GC Connects? Lots of people on GC Connects. And how many groups are you in on GC Connects? Couple? 10, half a dozen, 35. I'm in probably 35. They're fantastic groups. I don't have time to keep up with the group, but I get email notifications, which probably drives Janet crazy, because right now it's the Happiness at Work Award, and I'm getting probably 50 GC Connects emails a day. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So there's groups on the Federal Workplace Wellness, Federal Workplace Wellbeing Network, Positive Psychology at Work, Positive Space Initiative, tons and tons of group. If you can find people in the public service who are trying to achieve the same kinds of objectives that you are, and to give you inspiration. Je pense qu'avec, on a toutes sortes d'idées qui existent ici déjà. Le Appreciagram, j'adore cette idée. Les cartes de compliments, gratitude cards, ça c'est beau. Ça c'est une autre idée qu'on a fait, c'est des actes de bonté. Pendant la semaine de Saint-Valentin, c'est la semaine du Random Acts of Kindness Week, and we created these little cards, and they're a pay it forward card. Donc, sur un côté, ça veut dire vous venez tout juste de recevoir un acte de bonté gratuit, and no act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted, on the other side of the card. And so we set up in our kitchen area a little sign with instructions, a bowl of chocolates, and a stack of cards. And the instructions were simple. Take a chocolate, that's our random act of kindness to you. Take a card and pay it forward. And as I always say, the chocolates disappeared much faster than the cards disappeared, so some people were only doing one half of the equation. But just like Franca was saying, you know, you see the little gratitude cards, and we would see these little random acts of kindness cards all over the place, where people had either, you know, taken one and put it up, or done or paid it forward to somebody else. So a little idea we could try. The Happiness at Work Award is open right now. How many people knew that? Very good. It's in CPAB-GAB. Between January and March 20th, which is International Day of Happiness, I open a contest, I guess, for people to nominate other public servants for the Happiness at Work Award. These are your unsung heroes. They're not just people who are in and of themselves happy, but there are people who bring joy to they make others feel happy. And this is really about valuing positivity and the people who engender that in our organization. So one of the things I put in CPAB-GAB is, will the winner, and the winner is the person who gets the most votes, be from CPAB or elsewhere in the public service. And there's a Canada 150 twist this year. If there's 150 people nominated this year, the winner will receive $150. So that's the Canada 150 twist. I'm a Canada 150 fan. Via GC Connects, j'ai rencontré virtuellement toutes sortes de gens. Un gars qui travaille à London, Ontario, a partagé cette idée. C'est le 30 par 30, le défi 30 par 30, so the 30 by 30 challenge. And the idea is to get outside for 30 minutes a day, 30 days in a row. So you pick a month, not January or February, but May or September. And part of what inspired this, or inspired me to write a post on this, is that I read somewhere that Canadians spend 90 or 95%, I think it was at least 90% of their day indoors. And that astounded me. I thought, there's no way people spend 90% of their day indoors. But when you start doing the math, particularly in winter, you realize we do spend an awful lot of time inside. And it isn't just this idea, the 30 by 30 challenge, of getting outside on your own. They did it as a group activity. One activity was they determined how many times you could walk around the building in 30 minutes. They did blowing bubbles. They did bird watching and geocaching, and they had a big barbecue at the end of it. So I always liked that idea. I'm going to talk to you very briefly about engagement, because as managers, promoting workplace wellness and well-being has a lot to do with engagement. And I talked earlier about the folks at Gallup who've assessed engagement for years. I don't know how well you can see this, but I'll use the analogy. If you had a boat and you were the coxswain in the boat and you had 10 people in that boat, according to Gallup, 3 people are busting their butts in that boat, 5 people are looking at the scenery, and 2 people are trying to drown the boat. They're trying to sink the boat. And that kind of is a reflection of, in general, engagement in a workplace. But the interesting thing is the impact we have as managers on staff and their level of engagement, and even for ourselves for that matter. So if you have a manager who ignores you, never gives you any feedback, the chances that you're engaged are virtually 0. And that's this particular one. That little green slice at the top of 2%, that's your chance of being engaged if your boss ignores you. Now, if your boss harps on your weaknesses and gives you negative constructive criticism, that's actually a huge improvement over being ignored. Your engagement chances go way up. Obviously, the best manager to have is a manager who focuses on your strengths, what you're good at, and helps you do that more and more every day. And if you've got that kind of manager, the chances that you are disengaged are virtually 0. That's this little red slice down at the bottom, 1% chance that you're disengaged. So the more we can, as ourselves, as managers, but also for our staff, help them to do what they're good at and do that every day, that's not only will make them perform well in the workplace, but career well-being, Gallup has learned, is the greatest determinant of a good life. So if you're not happy in your job, you're probably not going to be that happy in life, apparently. I talk a lot about 2 favorite questions I ask people, as you can tell. What are you good at? What do you love to do? A lot of people come to me for career advice, and those are the 2 questions I always ask them. And it was interesting, again, in a court conversation, we talked about those 2 scales, and we plotted them on a matrix. And it was interesting because one woman said to me, I may be really, really good at my job, but I don't love my job anymore. And I'd rather, that's the orange zone in the upper left, obviously the best place to be is in the top right-hand corner, the green corner, where I'm good at it and I love it. The worst place to be is the bottom right, left-hand corner, that I'm not good at it and I don't love it. You know, move out of that job as quickly as you can. But it's interesting, the 2 other quadrants. So her view was, I'd rather be doing a job that I really love, even if I'm not that good at, because that's where I'm learning, that's where I'm stretching, than to be in a job that I'm really, really good at it, but I don't love it anymore, because that's when I'm bored. And that was something I would never have thought of until we had this conversation as a group. So things you can think about with your own employees. J'ai parlé déjà du document, l'importance de la civilité, toutes sortes de choses intéressantes là-dedans. Incivility, Craig Dowden defined as rude, insensitive, disrespectful, and thoughtless behavior directed at individuals. And he talked about that seemingly inconsequential. And I think that this paper and the one after it on maximizing employee engagement really brought a lot to the public service, because the Civility Matters paper took things out of the realm of trying to define something as harassment, which is very difficult to define, and it's big and legalistic, and just talked about basic civility. So if you haven't read those papers, I commend. How many people have read Civility Matters? Yeah. And then I did a summary of it, 4 pages, if you can't find the time for 20 pages, but really good papers. Similarly with the Craig Dowden papers, and he talks a lot about this whole concept of helping people to do what they're good at. But also another thing that Craig Dowden talked about was the importance of meaning and purpose. And that's why I think in that blog post I wrote about being stressed but also being happy, it's because the work we do is so meaningful. He also talked about helping your employees to make progress. It's called the progress principle, and removing obstacles. And if somebody sends me something to review, and a day goes by, and 2 days goes by, and 5 days go by, every day that goes by that I don't get back to that employee with comments on what he or she has provided to me, is a day that their progress slips away. So, you know, that's a good thing to bear in mind. And so how many people have read this one? Maximizing Employee Engagement, the other one? Not too many? Yeah, they're both very, very good. I recommend them both. One thing that we did, it's a cool tool that we could very easily replicate here. I did it just the once and wanted to do it again, was a reverse mentoring speed dating. So imagine a room like this. We've got, let's say, 6 workstations, and we managers sit at those workstations, and we bring in a group of 6 young professionals who don't work for us, they come from other organizations, and they spend 10 minutes at each of our tables, and they rotate around. That's the speed dating part of it. And the reverse mentoring part of it is they tell us 3 things managers do that they love and wish we would do more of, and 3 things managers do that they don't love and wish they would do less of. And it's a very non-threatening way for us as managers to be reminded from an employee's perspective of things that are really important to them. Things like take me with you, things like tell me what happened to that thing that I worked on and I sent up. Did anybody like it? Did anybody use it? Some things like that. I know that out at FAC they love cake and they're having cake all the time, but somehow I always miss it because they don't have cake at 9 o'clock in the morning, but that should change. And any opportunity that you have where you're getting together, you're doing potlucks, you're having ice cream, that's great. Employees tell us all the time the importance of getting together with colleagues in a relaxed way so that you can build relationships. So remind you of that. I think I have just 2 tools left to share. One is T and TED, and anybody heard of T and TED? 1? 2. So very simple concept. Get in a boardroom, throw on a TED talk, drink some tea, have a conversation about it. A couple of folks at NRCan started this. They've got a great toolkit on GCpedia if you want to replicate, if you want to know what good TED Talks are out there. And it's a really cheap way to get really high quality speakers. We did it, we did 2, a T and TED plus core. One was on kindness, and then we did another session at another time that was about mental health first aid or emotional first aid. So a couple that we could get started with. And then finally, and I know FNIB does this, I don't know if we do it elsewhere within Health Canada or FAC, the Human Library. A great way to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. We did this and the focus was really on empathy, so we had people from all sorts of different walks of life. I read with, because the idea with a human library, if you're not familiar with it, is instead of signing out a book, you sign out a person. And you've got the little blurb or the dust jacket description of that person. And I found that the 2 people I read with, I could jump to chapter 2 and I could say right to somebody in a way I might not have been comfortable doing in the past. I could say, what was it like to grow up stuttering? Or what's it like to have cerebral palsy? And that ability to get, to have that empathy and be able to have a really open conversation like that is really, really powerful. So that would be another tool. Donc, j'espère que peut-être que j'avais partagé quelques points ou quelques exemples, quelques idées que vous pourriez faire avec vos équipes ou que nous pourrions faire ensemble dans la direction générale. Et c'est tout.